Let's finish up Unit 4 by looking at several different additional topics, the first of which is fiduciary duty and derivative lawsuits. Fiduciary duty is simply a duty imposed on the officers of a company to make decisions that are in the best interest of the company. We occasionally see derivative lawsuits filed against company officers by shareholders claiming that the company officers are responsible for a harm by breaching their fiduciary duty and allowing that serious harm to occur. Now, typically, the board of directors will not approve a lawsuit on their own officials. Therefore, the plaintiffs have to file a derivative lawsuit asking permission to file a lawsuit on behalf of the officers. Under the business judgment rule, however, the courts tend to back the officers of a company pending evidence to the contrary and support their decisions that these decisions were in fact in the best interest of the company. To pursue a derivative lawsuit, you must show that the board exercised bad faith. But what's bad faith? Bad faith can be one of three things that happen. One, the directors intentionally acted with malintent. The directors intentionally violated the law. The directors intentionally failed to act in the face of known duty to act, disregarding their responsibilities. In the case of data breaches, it's this last scenario, failing to act in the face of known duty to act, that's generally the approach taken. Now, there haven't been any successful cases of derivative lawsuits to date, but it's something to watch. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, is an interesting topic to look at. Every day we see companies purchase other companies in the U.S., and some of those purchases get more scrutiny than others. However, when a foreign company wants to purchase a U.S. firm, there may be some additional scrutiny, particularly if that company is in the critical infrastructure or it's a defense company. As you look at the components, the people who make up the CFIUS committee, Attorney General, Homeland Security, Commerce, Defense, State, Energy, the U.S. Trade Representative, Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology. This is most of the cabinet, as well as some of the president's staff. A case that the textbook brings up is Japan's SoftBank purchase of Sprint, which I believe was in 2013. There was concern that the purchase would lead SoftBank to direct Sprint to purchase telecommunications equipment from Huawei and ZTE, both Chinese firms. Now, if you remember, when we talked about critical infrastructure, the telecommunications sector is part of our critical infrastructure. So CFIUS and the House Intelligence Committee expressed a concern that incorporating their equipment into the national telecommunication infrastructure could be a risk. Sprint and SoftBank, however, pledged not to purchase any equipment from Huawei and ZTE. And so with that pledge, CFIUS basically stamped the purchase agreement and off they went. However, we're still seeing the same argument today, particularly as the infrastructure tries to move to 5G. And Huawei has 5G equipment, which is being used in other places. So it'll be interesting to see how that argument continues forward. And will CFIUS block any purchases of companies that are wanting to purchase Huawei 5G equipment to place inside of our national telecommunications infrastructure? Export controls at Wassenaar. Export controls have long existed on the sale of certain types of equipment. Military weapons, military aircraft, missiles, dual-use equipment, and deemed export. So years ago, I used to have to deal with ITAR, the international trade regulations on arms, which because we were using encryption technology, we were an international company, and it was not possible at that time for me to ship encryption technology over to one of my foreign offices. There's also today concern about dual-use equipment that may be used in your infrastructure that could also be used in a military infrastructure. So some countries are not allowed to purchase directly any dual-use equipment. And deemed exports is a very interesting it's a very interesting aspect of the export control rules. So, for instance, if we write software to develop an intellectual product here in the U.S., certain countries, we can't allow people from those countries to help work on that software. So you have to look at the control lists, the export control list, to determine what countries we can actively work with and what countries we can't. And you can go to the U.S. Department of Commerce, I believe it is, and submit your plans to them and get a letter that says it's okay to work with the engineers in that particular country, and it won't be considered a deemed export. The U.S. was a signatory to the Wassenaar Agreement. This is an agreement on export control laws, but it's not a formal treaty. So the U.S. has passed regulations to comply with Wassenaar over the years. In 2013, the Wassenaar arrangements were amended to add intrusion software to the list of export controls. This is software that's designed to avoid detection by monitoring tools, protective countermeasures, and performing the extraction of data or information from a computer or network, modification of underlying system, and modification of an execution path to run alternative processes or software. So as you can see, it's software that has a lot of punch to it if you're doing security research or if you're trying to set up a subversive operation to surveil a company or a person.